to this computer recording. Good evening, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving. We all survived Thanksgiving. We all gained 20 pounds, but 2 more weeks, this week and next, and then we're done, and then we can go enjoy Christmas. So we always start, and we've got even some more panelists, I think, coming in here in a little bit. So I'm just going to start by running around the whole room and calling out your name and having you introduce yourself. And then, I'm all choked up. Like I told the panelists, they don't have to prepare anything because you guys have all the questions, especially after last week. So we'll start with Dave LaBelle. Dave, just tell us who you are and what you do.
Who am I? I'm a photographer, a writer, a reporter, a teacher, an all-around nice guy, probably most known for writing the Great Picture Hunt. I worked at now 23 newspapers, 3 magazines, 2 TV stations, and 4 universities. Other than that, nothing. And I now work at a small newspaper. I work 1 day a week at a small paper, and they give me a page every week to photograph whatever I like.
Nice. Very nice.
In Iowa. I'm in Iowa.
They do have all of your bios on the website. So, Greg.
Yes. Hello, everybody. My name is Greg Cooper. I'm currently an assistant professor of photojournalism at Eastern Illinois University in Charleston, Illinois. Previous to that, I taught at multiple schools, including Brooks Institute in California, and was a daily newspaper photographer, newspaper picture editor, and undergraduate from Western Kentucky University.
And one of my students.
Oh, yeah. That Santa-looking guy who should be shot for a picture story. He was one of my teachers. That's right.
Are we all students of Dave LaBelle?
Yeah.
I was just going to say that.
Oh, thank you.
Hi, I'm Christy Blaisdell. I'm in Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania. I teach yearbook and 10th grade English, and I run the theater program.
Alexis.
Hi, my name is Alexis Berkey. I teach in Cypress, Texas. This is my second year advising newspaper, but my first year advising yearbook. And the class is called newspaper, but we don't really do a newspaper. We do a news magazine. But yeah, that's me.
The cold weather's coming. Get ready. Michelle.
Hi, everyone. Michelle Balmeo. I'm a teacher, advises the news magazine yearbook at West Albany High School in Albany, Oregon, and this is my 18th year.
Barbara.
Oregon. I'll be there next week.
Definitely in the fan club of Dave LaBelle. Dave, I'm currently reading Death and Life. Great Picture Hunt. Everybody should read it. Dave is probably almost lesser known for his pictures in that his writing is very inspiring, and it encourages you to build community, to build relationships, to get out and meet people and breathe their air. And they're wonderful reads. You can find used copies a lot of places. Pick them up. If you read anything about photojournalism, read Dave's books. I met Dave doing some work with the Ohio News Photographers Association. And for anybody who doesn't know me, I'm Barbara. I work with the Columbus Dispatch, Columbus, Ohio. Mostly a still photographer, doing a little video and current reels queen. I have a 4-year-old.
Bless you.
All right, Leslie.
Hi there, I'm Leslie Fireman. I work at West Chicago Community High School, which is about 50 minutes outside of Chicago. This is my second year as the advisor of the journalism program in the newspaper. So we are really just kind of building our program from the ground up.
Good, Leslie.
Kirsten.
Hi, I'm Kirsten Gilliland. I'm in my 4th year teaching and advising in Grand Island, Nebraska, where I teach sophomore English, yearbook, and broadcasting.
Sophomore English, is that literature?
Yeah.
Sonia.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sonia Singh. I'm a writer, photographer, editor. I work freelance, mostly in music journalism and arts and culture writing, which really just means I spend far too many hours at concerts. And I also work at California Baptist University. I'm the director of the student media group there.
And your styling.
She always is.
The hat's doing all the work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Beth.
Hi, my name is Beth Koreski. I am in Parkersburg, West Virginia, which is just on the Ohio-West Virginia border. This is my 8th year teaching, but it's only my 2nd full year as a journalism advisor, though I have a journalism degree. And I am a huge fan of photography, but I don't know too much about teaching it. So I have been soaking up all this information. I advise a full journalism program with Journalism 1, Mass Communications, which is broadcast, newspaper, and yearbook.
Gee, Beth, I should have known you. I just left Athens 6 months ago, so we would have been neighbors.
Oh, really? You were at OU?
Yeah, I was there the
Oh.
last 4 years, yeah.
Oh, awesome. We love it over there. I send a lot of students over there to their journalism program.
They had a rough weekend. Lauren.
Gotcha.
Okay, there we go. I don't know this thing. I don't use Zoom very often. I'm here in Salisbury, Maryland. I work as a photographer at the Daily Times here, and I've been doing this for about 7 years now.
Interestingly enough, she got her first degree from SCAD and in audio something or another, right?
Yeah.
Which I keep telling me she can make a lot more money doing the audio work, but she likes taking pictures.
True.
Bev. Can't hear you. Are you there, Bev?
That dog hasn't moved.
Yeah. Sometimes we have technology problems.
Can't get nothing by me here.
All right, Bev. Well, if you come back, we'll get you when you come back. Huh. It shows no video, no audio, so she may be locked out. All right, let's see. Michelle, how about if I give you the first question?
All right, well, I will throw out a question that's been that I've been struggling with lately, which is I have some timid photojournalists who want to hide behind their camera and they don't want to talk to people. And so they come back with a whole slew of photos, but they have no idea who anybody is, what they were doing, or anything interesting. And then they don't want to go find them to ask them because they're scared of talking to people. So what was, maybe you never had that problem or encountered that problem.
Every day.
But what
Every
advice would you give to a young person about that aspect of the job they're doing, especially when knowing that most of them joined Yearbook because, quote unquote, they like taking pictures?
You want to jump in first, Greg? Because I mean, I might go all night.
Well, yeah, it seems like everything I learned about talking to people came from David LaBelle, but I'll give you a couple of pointers. Even at the college level, my students have struggled with this, and I encourage them, like, look, without names, your pictures are useless or pointless. So, I mean, think of it that way, that the motivation at least has to be, you have to get a name, it's required. But one of the tricks that I do for my students is without a camera, actually. I'll make them play games. I'll say, okay, for the next 30 minutes, you're going to walk around campus. You're going to introduce yourself to 5 people you've never met, and then just take a little note on each one. You come back to class and you're going to report on them. So just a simple little exercise to get them out of their comfort zone, and without the pressure of having to use a camera. To some extent, it's not the pressure, but also some students use their cameras like a comfort blanket. So it takes that away from them too. So just a simple exercise like that can be beneficial. So you might try that.
Mm-hmm. Michelle, what I've found worked best for me is to show them. I remember a seminar I was doing in Kentucky, and we had a whole group of students, and they were timid. They were standing back, and there was a guy out there mowing. I think he was cutting a tree, but he was just giant guy. He had his shirt off. Chips were flying everywhere. I mean, he looked kind of like a monster. He was huge, and I said, and the pack was with me. I said, who wants to go up and ask this guy if you can make a picture of him? And they backed up and went, oh, I'm not doing this. And I said, I want you to go with me. I said, follow me and watch what I do. And, you know, they realized that he was really a very nice guy. He may not have looked like it, but he was a really nice guy, and he enjoyed having his picture taken. And I said, you're going to find that that's true in most cases. What we do is we have these fears within us that somehow, I'm not sure where they come from, but we let that become a barrier for us to talk to people. And so Greg will know that I'm not, it's not that I'm not shy. I just feel like that everybody is related to me. I feel, and my wife says all the time, she says, you just act like people always like you. And I said, well, I do act like that. And until they prove otherwise, I'm gonna keep going that way. So it's always a pleasure. It's never a work. It's not like I have to do this. It's not, I get to do this. I get to meet somebody that I don't know and talk to them and ask them about themselves. And it's rare that people don't respond to that. It's really rare. So I do think you setting the example is going to be real important. You or somebody else they look up to, and go out with them, maybe 4 or 5 at a time, and introduce them and show them how that's done. And I think they'll feel a lot more comfortable personally.
Sonia?
That's hard to go after that. That's such good advice. It's true. Well, something that I've done with students that I actually borrowed from a photographer friend of mine was to kind of introduce it incrementally with students as well. And for an assignment, have them, you don't have to go up to a stranger for this one, but you also can't use a friend, and have them go somewhere in between and say, find this week like an acquaintance, like a friend of a friend, someone who you can like, someone can make an introduction very basically, and they know that, you know, you're going to be safe and it's going to be fine, and go spend some time telling that person's story visually, and have that be the assignment as like the first step, as sort of wading into the water. It can't be someone you know well, but it can be someone that like tangentially is in your world. And then after that, move up to, okay, now let's try going up to a stranger. And you're absolutely right. I don't think I've ever had a student in a photo class so far who's had a bad experience going up to someone. The worst case was, oh, I'd rather not have my picture taken, or maybe there's a reason they don't want their picture taken. No one's ever been mean about it. So I love the idea of going with someone and seeing someone do that for the first time, because I live in that gray area too, where I can be shy about it, but I also love hearing people's stories. So going with someone who's completely confident about it, just to walk up and talk to someone, and see that it's just a Band-Aid.
Yeah. Lauren?
I guess I'm on the opposite. I'm definitely one of those that hates having to talk to people sometimes. But usually I just have to, but you know, I work for a newspaper, so I have to get the photo in. So I usually have to hype myself up a little bit and be like, I'm just going to get one. And then after the one, it's a lot easier to go to the second, and then the third. And then I've got all the names I need and I can go ahead and put it in. But I think that's the biggest thing, just telling yourself it'll be okay. And normally the people that look the angriest are always the nicest for some reason. I don't know why that is.
That's true.
I agree with that.
Can I add
Super
something
dogs.
quickly, Bradley? And that is it's so important here with young people, is that if you operate under the assumption that people don't want to be photographed, or you operate under the assumption that you're taking something from them, you're going to fail. I believe when I go in with somebody, I believe that I'm giving them something. I believe that I'm giving them a gift. I'm acknowledging them as who they are. And anytime you make somebody feel important and you really are seeing them, it's rare that they don't respond. But if I go in timidly thinking, oh my gosh, I'm stealing their time, I'm stealing their image, I'm taking something from them, they're gonna sense that energy in a minute. And whereas if you just go in like you belong, I mean, I go in as though, I mean, it's like I'm one of their family members, and until they kick me out, I'm going to keep doing that.
And we don't have to go around to everybody on every question. If you don't want to answer a question, we'll just keep going. Who's next?
I've got a question.
Shoot, Barbara.
So the biggest reason I took this class was not that it was going to be like an easy A or a blow off or anything, but what I want to know is, for those, you've been photojournalists, you've worked, what have you learned from becoming educators, or when you have done educational things, whether it's mentoring or in the classroom or, you know what, I know a lot of things, but I don't know necessarily how to teach it. So I don't know if that I'm making sense, but how do you go from one step to the other? And Bradley, please feel free to jump in as well.
I think that's a great question. Sonia, you want to start? You're
I'm
still
gonna,
doing
I'm gonna
both.
think on that one for a second. Yeah.
Sonia's still doing both. Greg has made the transition. Greg?
It's the best advice I got in regards to that transition was the night before my first class. One of the professors told me, like, you just need to be one day ahead of them. And I thought, you know, that's brilliant. And it turned out my first day that was the first semester, I kind of operated that way. I don't really operate in a comfort zone there. I'd like to be much more prepared, much more organized. But being that one day ahead gave me a lot of confidence to approach them. And no matter what, me walking in the door, I know more than they do about the profession, the craft. So that gave me a lot of confidence to be the person they needed me to be.
Yeah, that was really true for me at Kansas State when I taught intermediate web design for the first time. Walked in and had 5 days to prepare for a course. We were teaching Flash and fireworks and all that kind of stuff, and I had no idea. I just have to stay one day ahead of them. You know, most of the courses that you teach, you'll teach over and over and over again. I could walk into news reporting now. I walk into news reporting, look at the syllabus, and I don't need any prep time. But you know, sometimes the other ones I do. Lauren, you just got out of the classroom. What would be your thoughts? She's abandoned me already.
Wait, did you say me?
Yeah, you.
What do you mean I just got out of the classroom?
Well, you've been out of the classroom for 7 years. Comparatively.
But I don't teach. I was just a student.
I know you were. So what advice would you have for these teachers? Ooh, I threw it back on her. We can come back. You can think on it.
I would like to add something, Bradley.
I was coming to you next. It's all you.
Oh, okay. First of all, one of the easiest ways to teach a class is let the class teach you. And that the class, usually there's people that are in that classroom that know things that you don't know. And you're going to learn that from them very quickly. You don't have to be the know-it-all. You know, what you have to do is just sort of keep control of the class and don't let somebody take it over. But you're going to find that, you know, they're going to give you a lot of advice and they're going to give you a lot of information that you didn't have. They're going to know things you don't know. And maybe connected to that, I learned a great lesson when I was at Western, because I remember one time a guy came in there and he had like peacock green hair and a nose ring. And I thought, oh my gosh, who is this guy? And then the more I listened to him, the more I realized he was really bright, and he really had a good heart and a lot to say. And it taught me right then very quickly to not look on the exterior, to really look at every individual person and say, I'm a coach, and it's my job to find what is inside that person, what they're good at, and how do I chip away and bring that out of them so that they can recognize it. And so it's really, I think a good teacher, and you look at, you know, it's like being a good farmer. If you're a farmer, you're out there, you're watching your cows, and if one of them's limping, something's wrong, or if one of them doesn't eat, something's wrong. And so when you have students, you watch them very closely. You watch how that they interact with each other, and you're looking for opportunities to find something they do good that you can build on, and you can build their confidence, and then you can go from there. And I think too much teaching is we look at it as an overall class and not a group of individuals that are there trying to achieve something.
Sonia?
Yeah, that's such a good point. I always think about the range of students. Sometimes we get in a class someone who's an absolute beginner, and then someone who comes in who's had several years of experience or has been a hobbyist for a long time. And how do we teach both of them and both have them get something out of it? But if the newbie moves from here to here, and then the advanced person just moves just a little bit further from where they are, it doesn't matter that they don't end up in the same place as long as they've both grown. And it's so cool to see that growth along the way. What I would add too is if I had ever get nervous about like what am I gonna teach them, right? What am I going to put together for this? I remember that the reasons that we love photography are the same reasons they're going to love it too. And it's a chance for me to just share amazing photographers' work. And I'm like, wait, that's allowed. I can just show cool things and successful, amazing work and just talk about why it's so powerful or beautiful or compelling.
Right.
And we can talk about that together. And I think photography lends itself especially well to that, even beyond writing, where it may take longer to get at the mechanics of a piece and why it works so well. But you can put one image from an amazing photojournalist or someone who just took a fantastic photo this weekend and you want to show that to the class. It's so easy to go around and talk to people about why it moves them. And more often than not, I find that students, even the ones who say, I don't know anything about photography yet, will pick up on those same exact things in the images, and it starts a great conversation.
Good point.
Lauren, any advice for the teachers on that front?
Okay. Well, I guess the best teachers I had were always the ones that taught me how to learn something new. So, especially with how everything changes in terms of, I guess, technique or equipment or what we're going to do next, it was, well, now I know how to go out and figure it out on my own because someone taught me how to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How to learn is powerful.
Well, I mean, we all have to, we're supposed to remember what it was like to be a student and what it was like to be intimidated by a certain teacher. I think everybody's ever went to college has had a bad teacher. Somebody who wouldn't take time with you, who wouldn't listen when you asked a question, couldn't answer it, and probably couldn't do what they were teaching. So most of us have had that experience. So for us, and I know Greg's this way, is you're patient with somebody, you're patient with their learning, because the whole goal here is to build their confidence, because that's what separates people. Once they build confidence in something, and it's step by step, if I learn to do one thing, I get confident, then I can go on to the next thing. So we have to be really patient with people.
Next question.
I'm curious, what is the biggest ethical dilemma you guys have faced in your careers, and how did you go about solving it?
That's what we did in my class today, but all week long is ethics. Good question. Anybody want to jump in?
Go ahead, Greg.
I'm just trying to think of
artists.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't had any, but I've watched reporters seemingly have them, especially the sports reporters, because of how close they had to be to coaches in order to get stories. But then if there was something going on with those athletes, so then it was, now I don't want to really write the story because that's my friend, but you have to write the story because it's a story, because it needs to be known. So those are the ones that I've seen the most, is they got way too close to their sources, because
Nicole,
then where's the line?
If you ever get to hear Nicole Kraft at OU, Ohio, she likes to talk about that. That's a very real problem.
That resonates at the high school level, because these are people who they maybe have even grown up with, and they know their families. And at least in Albany, it's a pretty small town.
Yeah, you would also have the problem with small towns is that the school administration in most places is probably the biggest barrier to running anything that's real anyway. Because most places they'll come in and say, you can't run that story, we're not going to do it. And in small papers, sometimes it's advertisers that put the pressure on you not to publish what is true and what really happened. So I mean, you always run into who has the money, always.
It's funny you say that, Dave,
is going to determine that.
One of my students today, keep in mind that these are sophomores. This particular one was not majoring in journalism, but most of the class is. And we spent 5 minutes trying to convince her that we could run a story that the coaches wouldn't like. She was absolutely convinced that we could never do it. And I'm like, well, why do we care what the coaches? Wait a minute, you've made it through the entire semester and still don't understand that our job is to report the truth, not necessarily what the coaches like. And you're right. Greg?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things come to mind in regards to that. I've been thinking more recently about the ebb and flow of ethics and photojournalism from, I don't know, when I was initially a shooter, a daily shooter, and then now that I'm as a teacher. And it feels like the way I'm teaching photojournalism ethics is the way I learned it when I was at Western Kentucky, which seems to be pretty hardcore. And I can't help but seeing influences through social media and capture technology through the cell phone nowadays with my students, that some of those lines are blurred. It's just the understanding about how the students are approaching gathering stories and how they're talking to people. It's not as clear cut anymore for how I'm able to teach it. It's not just black and white. So I'm finding that to be kind of challenging. It's not really an answer to your question. It seems to be more of an issue for me in my
Greg,
class.
let me push you on that a little bit. Do you, when you teach ethics, just in a routine class, not an ethics class, do you teach it at the beginning of the class or at the end of the class?
I usually teach ethics in the middle of the class. So get their feet wet a little bit, try to coach them and guide them on how to approach photographing different things like features or news or portraits. And then at some point,
I found you need a little base knowledge there. Otherwise the ethics don't make sense.
Right.
But I've also found I really can't wait till the end because of what you just said. They're walking around with cameras all the time. And if the apartment complex next to campus is on fire, we want them taking pictures. And so they have to understand a little bit of the law and a little bit of the ethics. So we circle to it 3 times. We teach it a little bit at the beginning, a little bit more in the middle, and we come back to it at the end.
I'll tell you one conversation that has been very helpful, no matter if it's a photojournalism class or any journalism class, is my favorite lecture is the idea of, well, what's moral, what's legal, what's ethical, and really start to break that down for the students in regards to whatever the context or whatever the topic is, so that they have a better understanding of how the ethics of a profession approach it, or what their moral feelings are, and are they in conflict with, say, the legality of, First Amendment and such. So that's been very helpful.
Dave, thoughts?
What are the gray areas that y'all are having issues with?
The gray areas?
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, when I'm teaching ethics, it's you're teaching it all semester. As things come up, you have to deal with them. And I mean, because if I was going to break it down, we would say, well, how do we gather the news? The behavior in gathering the news is the first thing I want to talk about. And then in that, you're going to say, is trespassing okay? And when is it okay? And so you have to deal with those issues. But then once I do that, then I'm going to say, well, how am I going to present this now? Now that I've gathered all this information, I made the pictures, I got the story. How am I going to present that? How is it ethical that I focus on this woman and she just happened to cry for 1 second, but she really wasn't crying, but that's a stronger picture. So you get into that battle of, okay, what am I going to publish? What is my responsibility to those that I'm photographed? And what is the responsibility to those who are hiring me, or those who, the university I work for? And so it's not very easy. There's a lot of questions that have to be answered along the way. I mean, that's
Lauren, I'll give you.
why I wrote the book Lessons in Death and Life. Is because I had such a conflict with what was morally right and what was legally right, and that's what that book resulted.
Lauren, I'll give you an example of one that these people might really face. There's a picture that a friend of mine shot years ago now of 2 football players after they won a game or had a really successful play, and they're both on the sidelines of the field, with 10,000 people behind them and 10,000 people in front of them, giving each other a big giant bear hug. And the picture comes up on the screen, and inevitably somebody in the class goes, "Oh, gay, gay, gay." I'm like, now let's talk about that, right? So, that's a real reaction that people have to that picture. And so then we talk about that. Okay, is that what was going on there? Of course not. That had nothing to do with it. It was the sheer unbridled emotion of the reaction to a successful play at a football game on the sidelines. And like Dave said, is that the moment that we want to put out there because of this other connotation that people might have? We published the picture, by the way. We published it huge. They love it. But like Dave said, also, it's the discussion that's valuable, having that discussion.
And there's a word, we use words like what is fair, and that's a loaded word. What is fair? What is representative? And you can always go back to, if I was the subject, how would I respond? How do I feel about this? Am I being treated accurately and fairly? And so the best we can do is just aim for fairness and accuracy. And we're never going to hit the target exactly. We never will in ethics, because it's such a slippery slope.
Kristen, was that your question? Did that help at all?
You're welcome.
You know what? That reminds me of that day. Do you remember when after I graduated, Bradley, and your students published a picture I took like years before of this girl on a story about gaining weight as a college student?
Ah, yes.
And I'd taken that photo for something completely different. And they called, I think her mom called the job that I had just gotten and talked to the editor to yell at me for a photo I took for something completely different.
So let me give you another quick real one. A student of mine who works out in the West Coast did a story about a woman at a college, and she had been abused. Basically, she and the reporter together almost talked the young lady into going public, into telling her story, and knowing that it was going to be very sensitive. It was very sensitive, and the young woman ended up committing suicide afterwards. So you have to live with that. You have to live with how much did I anticipate could happen. And I tell you what, I've been in a lot of stories. Sometimes I'll photograph something and it'll be very visual. And I know the response. I know that when people see these pictures, they're going to misjudge it, or they're going to take this child away from the mother, or something is going to happen. I know better than that. And so I feel like I think I have a responsibility to kind of to handle their life with care. It's not an easy thing, but that's what happens when you're there. You recognize the power of a photograph and the power of a story, and how it can make lives better, or it can absolutely crush people's lives. We hold that in the balance, and students need to be taught that they are carrying this nitroglycerin and that they have a lot of power.
I think that's really true for yearbook advisors. That's something that yearbook advisors really need to hear. Leslie?
That's something that we tell students as well. Oh, sorry, Bradley.
Go ahead, Sonia. It's all you.
I don't think sometimes students realize when they agree to go on record for an interview or be in a photo, sometimes they're just not thinking about how it's going to live forever as well. And they know they're talking to a reporter. They get that, but it's just something different the moment they see it in print and they can hold it in their hands, or it's online and now all their family back home can see it. And we have had people as well kind of come back to us saying, like, I know I agreed, but I have changed my mind. And I know that once they've gone on the record, like you're saying, legally, we're fine to use that material, but like morally, should we at that point, and have that conversation about, do we need to put this person in this story? What's the greater purpose here? And if we can leave them out, then especially, it's like a brand new freshman or something coming in, I can't expect them to have considered how this is going to potentially follow them for years and years after this. Yeah, we have those conversations in our newsroom all the time.
Good conversations.
I hate to hog it, but I got to tell you one more quick story. When I was in Sacramento, I was working on a story on mental health, and I had them lock me up for 24 hours in a mental institution because I wanted to see what happened and photograph what happened. And it was very violent. And I had this really nice set of pictures of this one young woman, and watching how she changed when she went through the meds and everything. So the editor looked at it and said, "Oh my gosh, this is so powerful." He said, "Are you sure that she's all right with it?" And I said, "Well, that everybody else says we can't publish it, but I believe that she does have the right to say whether or not she's going to publish it. She has the right to go out and have sex with whoever she wants to on the lawn. I think she can decide whether she wants to have her picture taken." So he said, "Okay, I'm going to follow you in that." And then the day before it was published, before we were going to go to press, he said, I just feel more comfortable if you call her one more time and make sure that this is okay." And I said, "Oh my gosh," because I knew that we had a really strong set of pictures. So I called her again and I did it, and she just said, "No, I changed my mind." Oh, my heart just dropped. I thought, oh my, but that was the right thing to do. She had the right to change her mind. And in that it was that significant of a story and we didn't. So, I mean, the thing still did well. The story still did well, but it wasn't nearly as strong as it would have been with that set of pictures. So we have to make those decisions all the time.
Leslie, go for
You
it.
want me to? Okay, go ahead. So this is a total segue from moral and ethical dilemmas. But one thing that I've been really contemplating as we come to the end of this course is we're on an extremely limited budget. And the last time the previous advisor upgraded the camera equipment for our program was 2008. So really cell phones have better technology than what we have in our newsroom. So my question for the experts would be, if you had a limited budget, what would be your must-haves for the program?
I'm going to defer to those who are teaching.
70 to 200 f2.8. That's the lens that every school, every program should have at least one of those. So for regardless of the camera, get the brand name 70 to 200 zoom lens f2.8. I think that's the standard tool.
I would add a 24 to 70 2.8 to that as well. If you're going to have just two, we send our new people out with the 24 to 70 as well, because I also want them to like learn to zoom with their feet too and get up in there. But both of those, yeah, staples for sure.
The good news about both of those is for those who choose to be more serious about this craft, those are the tools that the professionals use anyway.
Right.
But I would tell you,
what I carry every day.
If you don't have any money, there's nothing wrong with buying a 50 millimeter 1.4 lens, because that, if you want to have your legs be the, telephoto, that's the best lens to do it, because that's what your eyes see. And a 50 millimeter lens, I know it sounds obsolete, but it's still a reasonable lens. I'd rather give somebody a 50 than I would a 24. I'd rather have them go up and fill the frame and not have people look like banana heads.
A newbie.
Yeah,
Lauren,
and the nifty 50 is great. The other thing that I'll mention is all of the equipment that we buy for our program, both for teaching journalism and also for their student newspaper, is used. We buy quality used from B&H or Amazon, and I'm the one who's actually picking the exact lenses out to make sure that it's of quality from a reputable buyer. And you save at least 50%, so keep that in mind.
Precision Camera in Austin also has an amazing used department. Lauren, you were going to say something, I think?
No, I've only just seen the kids on the sidelines standing huddled together in pairs far away from all the action. So
that 70 to 200 is one of the things I tell students all the time is you invest in glass. The camera is just something that holds the card. You buy a new camera every few years, but you can keep a 70 to 200. Mine's on year 18, I think, now. So invest in glass. It's expensive. Good glass is expensive, but it's going to last a while. Good question. Christy?
So again, complete change of direction. I'm working on getting my yearbook program to go more in a journalistic direction instead of just what's your favorite food in the cafeteria. How would you advise me to take that shift? Because I have a lot of, they can take yearbook 4 times in 4 years. So I have a lot of repeat students who are used to an old way. And what would you do in that situation?
Dave?
What would I do? I'm not sure what I would do. My mind was thinking about what I did a couple of years. I don't know if you know this, Bradley, but you remember Dow Tate?
Oh yeah,
Kansas
saw
City?
him a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, he used to have me come in. I'd come in a couple times a year, like I'd come in for a week, and I would work with his students for a week, and we would talk about content and approach and how do you shoot it. And I'd go shooting with him, and we would do this every. We did it a couple of times. We haven't done it for a while with him, but that was a really good program to do for somebody, by the way. That doesn't answer your question, but I just...
What I thought your question was going to be, your answer was going to be, Dave, was focus on the stories, because that's your...
Well, that's always what I'm going to do, because I mean, all the other stuff, you have to have the right equipment, and you have to answer a lot of technical questions. That's why I have Greg and people like that. But you also have to know, why you're doing this and what's the value in doing it, and why is it important to people, and then why is it important to you? And I've always believed in trying to connect the eyes and the heart. That's what I do. So, and I used to teach classes in junior high. I would do that when I was in Kansas. I'd go in there and teach them that very early on and lay the foundation right. So it's not a mechanical thing. It's a heart-based thing.
Christy, that's where that book, The Great Picture Hunt, would be a good resource for you. Greg,
Yeah,
you
so
were gonna say?
actually, I was looking at that on your website. Are there 2 books? I only saw the Great Picture Hunt 2.
You want number 2.
I want number 2. Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
the other ones are kind of out of print.
Yeah.
They're
But you can also read
definitely,
a novel.
you can look
also
on
read the
Amazon and
novel.
eBay. That's where I ended up getting Death in Life.
Yeah.
Was
You
and
can just write to me, Barbara. You don't have to go to eBay. You guys like
it's hard to keep track of you. It's hard to keep track of you.
Just go, stick your head out the window and says, "Where's Dave LaBelle?" You know, I mean,
Or
you
check
just
your
go on.
libraries. They're
Yeah,
every time I buy a copy, and also like Bob Lynn's book, like and there's another Photo J book that I'm trying to remember that Max Gersh recommended. Like I always end up wanting to buy 5 more copies to give them to people. Just they're so like inspiring is an overused word, but it puts together everything that I'm trying to accomplish in a day. And it Dave's books make me slow down and remember like why I got into this, for the
I
reason.
think Barb makes a good point there too. It's also nice to have a copy in the library because sometimes you're not there or whatever.
Or even like a classroom library.
I have a classroom library, but I always put a copy in the library. You might inspire a student that's not even in your class.
By the way, if you go to davidlabelle.com, I'm always there. It may not be the prettiest website, but it's functional.
Sonia,
Christy, let me, if you don't mind, I'm going to jump in on this question because I want to articulate it just slightly different. But my answer is going to be storytelling as well. Think of it this way. Yearbooks are very much like, hey, this is the drama club. This is what the baseball team did on this day. This is what a senior portrait looks like. This is the homecoming queen. Those pictures are very informational. They're 2-dimensional. This is what somebody looks like. My approach to storyteller, at least the way I teach my students, is like, great, this is what they look like, but I want to know who they are. What motivates them? What are their interests? What's novel about that particular person? Or, go have a conversation with this person and see what makes them tick. And make it more about story, more about depth, more about compassion and human interest, as opposed to this is, the homecoming court or whatever. So I think less 2-dimensional and more compassion.
Yeah, I think too often we stop at the what and when and don't push on to the why and how. And so if students want to write, what's your favorite food in the cafeteria? Well, why is it? Or who's the best teacher on campus? Who's your favorite teacher? And we're going to make a list of everyone's, campus favorites. Well, why is that person your favorite? And pushing for same answer, I guess, when you drill down to it, what's the story behind all of the what's and when's around campus?
Couldn't said it better, Greg.
All right, who hasn't asked a question? Anybody want to jump in?
I have a question. It
Go
might
for it.
be a silly question, but this is also my first year teaching photojournalism. And I have found that there have been a couple times kids ask me a question and I have no clue what the answer is. And I don't know what to do in those situations. Do y'all have any advice on that?
Yes, call Greg Cooper.
1 minute, please.
Yeah, let's do a quick Zoom call with David LaBelle.
You'll always call. This is really a kind of a small family. Photojournalism is not a real big family, and people are really willing to help. They're very open. And if you call and say, I don't know about this. I mean, I'm not going to embarrass. I've had several teachers when they first start teaching call me and say, can you help me? What's the first class? What should I be doing? And and I always help them because we should help them. So I think you're never going to have all the answers. None of us have all the answers, but you know people who will have answers,
Nor should you. I agree.
Yeah.
And I'm honest with my students. If they ask me something I don't know, I ponder for a second to see if I can answer. And if I can't, I'll let them know. Like, that's a really great question. I'm going to write that down and get back to you.
Yeah. My students asked, here, I'll give you one today. My students asked me what the dark web was today.
What the what was?
The dark web.
The dark.
Well, I mean, in concept, I kind of know what it is, but I just looked at the class. I'm like, I have no idea. Somebody go find out and come back next time and find out for us. I'll answer the question, then we'll go to Sonia. I'll say the worst thing you can do is make up an answer, pretending like you know. Just tell them, I don't know. I don't know. I'll get back to you, or you come to me after class and we'll go find out, or whatever.
That
Sonia?
comes with confidence.
Yeah, that I can't say it any better than that. And that they'll know if you're winging it and you don't know. I have no problem doing exactly what Greg and Dave have said. Like, I have no clue, but it's a great question. Like, let's figure it out together. Let's call the expert. Yeah.
We do.
Lauren, thoughts?
Oh, I just look everything up on Google if I don't know the answer. I just look it up.
It's
The
so
problem
fun.
is Google
Yeah,
giving you the wrong answer.
I'm envious. It's fun. I miss teaching, and that I still teach. I still have an online class, but I miss the teaching. I like to perform. I like to be in a classroom. I love the students. I love teaching them and challenging them. And so I'm envious of you guys. You're young and still doing this.
All right, who's got a question?
Who's got a question?
I can come back. So my next question would be, if you only had a semester-long class, are you focusing more on technique and giving them the skills that they need to operate, say, a DSLR, or are you focusing more on story and composition?
Easy answer. The latter. People can learn technique a lot easier than they can learn, to the content gathering and those decisions in there, because and I could cite dozens of my students that went on to win Pulitzers, well, not dozens won Pulitzers, but several of them won Pulitzers that were really bad technically. They were terrible, but they understood why they knew why they were doing this. They knew why they wanted to do this, and they got the heart right, and they learned the technical part of it along the way. It didn't take them too long.
So I started out as a writer first before I became a photographer out of necessity, when I realized sometimes they could only send one person. And then thankfully I fell in love with photography once I started doing it. But yeah, I would borrow, I didn't have a camera. So while I saved up for one, I would borrow from friends and whoever and take it home and learn the technical stuff, look it up, ask people just over the weekends. I so wish at that time that I'd had like a photo mentor, though, that could teach me how to see a photo, because I can go and learn the dials separately. Right. When I did get hooked up with those people who could talk about photojournalism and storytelling, that's when I felt like I really started to grow. And so I remember that's the only thing I'll build around, because I'm not a gearhead. As a result, I'm not the most technically skilled photographer out there, because I was just teaching myself as I went. But absolutely. And it's more fun. I enjoy talking about the other part of it more than I enjoy talking about the buttons and dials.
Right on.
Yeah, and I start my students off, I mean, it really depends on the class, but if I want to get to the heart of the story, I start off in the green mode, like just put it on full program and let's talk about everything else. We'll get to the other stuff later, a little bit at a time, but the camera does most of the work. I want them concentrating on composition and moments and story.
They all got quiet.
Beth, did I see you wanted to ask a question?
I have so many, and some are on topic and some are off topic. And I have, I guess the first thing I would ask is, like, what is as a teacher, if you just have the time to focus on story and composition, which I love, like, what's your favorite story and composition lesson? Like, what is it that you send them out to do first, or what is it that you send them out to do as their final? Like, what's your favorite lesson to get them to really click into that?
Well, let me tell you an exercise I started probably 10 years ago, and I maintained it all for the last years of teaching. I would do what I guess we'd call them quick shoots or fast shoots. And that is, they would start off in the class, and probably about the third class, they would have to go out and they'd have 90 minutes to go out and shoot 5 pictures. And I would give them 5 different assignments. It was basically a photo scavenger hunt. I'd say, okay, I want you to photograph a bridge. I want you to photograph one of your friends. So each time, and every week I upped the ante. So we started off at 90 minutes, then we went to 60 minutes, and then we went to 30 minutes. And we went to the 30 minutes, by that time they were doing 5 and 6 assignments. And they had to shoot them and have them captioned and sent back to me in 30 minutes. It's amazing how they learn to do that over the course of a semester. In the beginning, they just floundered, like, what are we going to do? But they learned to do it, and they would always tell me that was what they learned the most. They enjoyed it the most. They would go out and do it. So I think those kind of exercises early, and you start where they can have successes. Don't make it so complicated. Start it off. It might just be someone petting their dog. I don't know what it is, or it's a bridge, it could be a still life. But then you keep increasing that to where it has to be more interactive and more storytelling. Like, toward the end, I would say, okay, now you have to go do a story on a bus driver. I'm going to give you 60 minutes, but you have to find a bus driver and you have to go with them and do it. And they were able to pull it off. And they were like, oh my gosh, where am I going to start? And they learned to kind of keep a bank of ideas, and they would ask each other real quickly, and then they would run out, and I would keep a clock on it. I'd say, okay, for every 5 minutes, you lose 1 grade. But they absolutely loved it. It really engaged them to do that. So I did that for a lot of years, and it worked really well. So
That's
it's called,
cool.
it's called the photo scavenger hunt.
Gonna steal that idea. Yeah.
It works.
Yeah. I love the talk to a stranger thing too. I guess it's similar to like, go photograph a bus driver or something, but like, let's talk to strangers is one that students love as well, because it gets them past that fear of talking to folks, and they end up coming back with unexpected stories. And we say the same as I think you mentioned, Greg, just don't bring back a two-dimensional, that here's what a person literally looks like. The class should be able to tell us, like, we should look at the photo and be able to tell something about this person through the photo that you've shot somehow. And that one, I think I enjoy looking at those photos, and then they come out sort of enjoying it the most as well.
One of the positive things in all this too is there's a bit of a sifting process going on. Is some people recognize after going through a course, this is not who I am. This is not what I want to do. I don't like this. I don't like interacting. I'd rather go photograph rocks and trees. And that's just okay. It's really okay that somebody, I think that if you can come to that recognition through a class, then it was time well spent. Not everybody has to do this, and not everybody should do this.
We do the scavenger hunt thing too, and we do it on Twitter now. So their output is all on Twitter. Greg, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I do. It has more to do with composition than storytelling. One of my favorite lectures is it's essentially what I call constructing a composition. I give them the basics of what, like, say, rule of thirds or leading lines, or framing look like. And then I say, as a photojournalist, often we look for subject matter first. I intentionally tell them, I break it down this way, like, instead of looking for the subject first, look for the composition first, and then wait for the subject matter to happen within that composition. Mm. You would need to be in a place that has like high traffic areas, so that have the opportunity. But I'll say, okay, train yourself to see, say, rule of thirds just out there in the world, and then figure out what your picture is going to be, and then wait for something to happen. So you need to be patient. But I really enjoy giving that lecture because it's approaching teaching photojournalists a new way of looking at capturing, because normally we're just thinking moments. Like, as all of us who have shot in the real world know, everything has to be lined up perfectly. So instead of looking for moments first, look for composition first.
So that might be, you find a really cool archway on your campus and you wait for a person to be just, oh, nice, okay, that's cool, I hadn't done that one before.
Yep.
Another fun one we'll do is like common but compelling, where I'll encourage someone to go find something really boring and make it interesting. So if you go take a picture of a fire hydrant, I don't care, anything, absolutely anything around campus, but see it in a way that we have not seen it before.
Sure. My favorite one on that line was it was the macro assignment is what we called it, but they didn't have to have a macro lens. They had to find a piece of an object and take a picture of that object and bring the picture back, and whoever could make it the longest without people figuring out what it was. So a piece of a fan or a knob on an air conditioner or something,
Nice.
And they found that, so it got them to see the little
Yeah.
things that are so intriguing around us, that are everywhere, right? They love that assignment.
I like
And
that
you can do
too.
that with the phone now too.
Yeah, oh yeah. You can do most of it with a phone, quite frankly.
On that, with the comments on the phone, what do you think the future of photojournalism is, with so many people now becoming photographers, self-made, I guess?
Good last question. Lauren, you want to take that one first?
Do you mean like in terms of equipment or?
Probably more the profession.
Well, I think everything you learn as a photojournalist will still stand. I've seen so many like actually the other day, because I was not paying attention, I went out to an assignment and my battery was dead. And I didn't take an extra one with me because I just assumed my battery was charged. But my assignment was like 40 minutes away, so all I had was my phone. And it was at night. But considering the assignment was just photos of essentially Christmas lights and people walking around, I mean, everything I know about photography, it's not like I couldn't do it with a phone. And so could someone who just has a phone and is just taking pictures, would it have been the same thing as someone that knows about technique and what you should look for and how to compose shots? Will those be the exact same? So I think it's still, regardless of the equipment, everything else still stands. And being a photojournalist anyway.
True.
Sonia?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best camera is the one you have with you, right? So I mean, I love that so many people are able to explore photography who maybe wouldn't have before through smartphones. Yeah, all the principles can still apply. In our classes here, we don't require students to have a DSLR. If they've got a phone and that's what they do the whole semester, that's totally fine. And we get some incredible stuff back. But I also still love seeing all the other possibilities and things that come through with other equipment. I don't think it's going anywhere. I don't remember which paper it was a while ago that like got rid of all their photographers and gave everyone smartphones, and it did not go well.
Chicago.
So I don't think yeah. So I don't think anything.
It's great until they have to photograph baseball and football, and then it just doesn't work so well.
Yeah. Some stuff just doesn't work, but
Works
it is
better in the
still
locker room.
I
mean, our cell phones are just another one of our cameras that we use. I mean, wherever I'm going, I'm carrying two cameras and a cell phone, and sometimes the cell phone works better. Sometimes I'm more inconspicuous. Sometimes the wide angle lens works better. I've shot things on both cameras and said, God, why was I even using a DSLR? Because the cell phone was actually better in a certain situation. So it's just another camera, like you said. That's not going to change. The technology is going to keep changing. It's more about the display. I mean, it used to be on newsprint, and now it's online. Everything is online, or it's on television or something. But so it's where the things are being published and how they're being published more than how we're gathering them. I don't think the gathering is that different.
Well, see, I would tend to disagree with you slightly, although I think I get your point. And this is appropriate for a room full of people who teach photojournalism. This is what's going to keep our profession alive, teaching photojournalism. Anybody with a camera can make a picture and put it online. What separates us is the ability to tell a story with that equipment. Think of it this way: the technology to capture is going to keep changing, and the technology to deliver is going to keep changing. There's nothing we can do about that. We do need to keep on top of it, but we need to specify and just reiterate the importance of narrative, because that's what's going to keep our students employed and us as teachers.
People want to read stories, for sure.
Yeah. And then
Hi, Bev. Now we can see Bev. Bev and her cat made it in. All right, winding down. How about if I just give Dave the last word? You get 30 seconds, Dave.
I don't need it.
It's bedtime.
It's bedtime.
No, I'll pass. I'll give my time to somebody else.
It's all good. We got we've all got things to do tonight, right? I know we do. I'm looking.
No, I mean,
I'm
I
looking
could
at-
talk forever. I don't want to do, I don't want to hog the show, so go.
We've had long days with lots of students and things going on.
Bradley, I
So
do want to just add really quick. I am available as a resource. I think Bradley has passed along my email information. If you do come into a predicament and you want to reach out, I'm sure. I mean, I can speak for all of us. Rely on each other, rely on me, rely on whomever you can for resources, for material, for content. We are here to help, and I'm happy to do so. I love it.
Yeah, when it comes to that, you need something at the last minute, just shoot an email and say, hey, tomorrow whatever, somebody will help.
Or guest speakers.
So remind me where Albany is. Albany, Oregon. Where's that? Where is that?
We are between Salem and Eugene,
Between Salem and Eugene.
right
okay.
off 5-5, which
Yeah,
is
oh,
where
that's
most
right,
people in
okay.
Oregon live.
All
Right
right.
off 5-5.
Because I'm going to be there next week for a week. I'm working on 3 stories up there, so I will be in that region. I was going to say if you were in school, I would gladly pop by and
That would be awesome.
And talk for
That
30
would be
minutes.
amazing.
She
So
is in
we-
My
school.
kids would
She is in school,
love
so
it.
you need to.
so we should probably connect if you just got my email or something and let me know. Or
I'll stay on for a minute.
I'm sorry.
You do have.
I'll stay on for just a minute after we end
You
class.
do have their emails. Lauren and Sonia and Greg and Dave are all frighteningly
have-
accessible.
Yeah.
So do not hesitate to use their accessibility. I think one of the things that comes out of this course is that you guys in this course also become your own little network. And you'll find that sometimes your
Sure.
best resource is that person that you took that class with back in such and such. Right.
Absolutely.
So by all means, all of that said, we've got next week is open questions. It's your chance to ask all those questions of each other and of me that we haven't asked at this point in the semester. Please make sure that you've got your final exam questions in. This is the part where I was going to turn off the recording.